watch.
Yeah.
Like entirely, it's great.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Baruch Hashem.
Feel like you're in it.
Takes forever to upload, so I'm glad it's being used. Okay. We are on Tet Vav Amud Bet, page 15b2. Okay. Let's just go through the last bit that we did, and we'll continue. You're not going to have any satisfaction or joy because we're going to discuss it in the Gemara. But let's just revisit that one point again. Anshe Mishmar v'Anshe Ma'amad. Who are the Anshe Mishmar? The Kohanic tribe is divided into 24 Mishmarot. In these Mishmarot, they then have 6 Batei Av. Each one has 6 sections of the Mishmar. And then they would each serve one day of the week. So Sunday was Bet Av 1, Bet Av 2, Monday Bet Av 2. On the 7th day, they would all go to the Beit HaMikdash, so they would all be on duty. So we discussed last week, we talked about fasting as the fasts got more and more severe, how that fasting schedule affected the Anshe Mishmar and the Anshe Ma'amad. Now the Mishnah comes and says, Anshe Mishmar, which means the people of the Mishmar who are not necessarily on today. V'Anshe Ma'amad, and the people who are on today. Asur milisaper lechabes. They're not allowed to cut their hair, and they're not allowed to do their laundry during that time that they're on, if you will. Okay. Ubahamishi, and on the Thursday of that week, mutarin nekvora Shabbat. Then they're allowed to take already a haircut and wash their clothes because of the honor of Shabbat. No one wants the stinky clothes Shabbat. Okay. The Mishnah now goes back to what we spoke about earlier. Kol hakatuv Megillat Taanit delol misped. There are many days that were listed in this Megillat Taanit, in this book of fasts. And in that book of fasts, we learned about the fact that there are days that you're not allowed to do a hesped on. You can't do a eulogy on the fast. That means it's a heavy, joyous day. Okay? So not only do they not allow you to fast on that day, but you're also not even allowed to give a eulogy for someone if they pass away. So on days that it said the Lol Misped, Lifanav Asur, it was forbidden the day before the day of Lol Misped, Ulaharav Mutar. But after it was Mutar. Why? Because Lifanav, you're going in, we're scared, you might get distracted, you might be weak, you might whatever. Afterwards, Limahar, the next day is nothing. Why would it be a problem? However, Rav Yossi Omer lefanav ulaharav asur. No, we said it's asur before and after. Maybe he's worried about the fact that in the aftermath, a person will be getting swept up in the fasting. Rav Yossi Omer, Rav Yossi says lefanav ulaharav asur. It's forbidden before and after. So in both cases, deloli hitana, when the decree was not that they shouldn't give him a hesped. It was less than that. They just said you can't fast on this day. Then we say lefanav ula aharav mutar. It's mutar before and after because it's weaker. Rabbi Yossi, who was always one step behind on this, he says lefanav asur, before the fast, the day that was asur to fast, it was asur ula aharav, but the day afterwards, it was mutar. Now we continue with the laws of fasts. We do not make a gezerah of a fast to start the 3 fast cabal, Monday, Thursday, Monday. You don't start Thursday, Monday, Thursday. Why? We're worried if there's a storm, a foot race to the grocery stores to get food for Shabbat and to get food for the end of the fast. The marketplace owners, they'll think that there's a great chance to raise prices. There's a sharp downturn in supply and a massive demand. Will raise the prices. So therefore, we start instead Ela Shalosh Taniot Rishonot Sheni Hamishi V'Sheni.
It's amazing
Monday
that they were economists.
Yeah, 100%. They were aware of it.
Jewish also?
Even if they were Jewish.
So they wouldn't realize the rabbi said it's fast, don't worry, everyone fast?
They wouldn't realize that it was a fast, you're saying?
They wouldn't realize that the people are...
That's not really a economic downturn,
right.
Or whatever, or hoarding.
Right, the people are just buying food.
So on the first one, we say that that it's possible that they were not aware. Right? Already you'll see by the second one, we're not worried, because remember, it's not Monday. It's Monday, Thursday, Monday. But once you hit the Thursday, after you already had a fast on the Monday, they'll remember that there was a day that people bought extra last week, in the middle of the week, Monday. That's not to do with Shabbat. So therefore, they'll remember that it's a Monday, Thursday, Monday fast sequence. But if you look carefully, the Mishnah over here said, Shalosh Taniyot Rishonot, right? The first set. But Shalosh Niyot, first set of three, can't start on a Thursday. That means that the first fast, which is the one that you might have not have been aware that it was coming, shouldn't be on a Thursday because of the price gouging. So instead, they made it start on a Monday. What about the second set of three? V'shalosh shniyot, hamishi sheni hamishi. The second one actually, says the Mishnah, is Thursday, Monday, Thursday. Now you could carry on the sequence, Thursday, Monday, Thursday. Rabbi Yossi says no. Kishem she'en harishonot b'chamishi. The same way the first set is not on Thursday. Kach lo shniyot lo acharonot. Also not the second ones and not the last ones. Remember, we discussed earlier that there was a time break in between the when they were kovea the fasts, right? But even logically, without the time break, you'd have to check to see did it actually work or not, right? So in either scenario, Rav Yossi says, since there's going to be some form of time break, however large that time break is, whatever you were worried about in the first set of three, you should really be worried about in the second set of three or in the last set of seven. So therefore, Rav Yossi again argues. Rav Yossi is a heavy arguer in this Mishnah. Whatever they say, he seems to disagree with. Okay? And goes in Taanit al Tzibur, Rosh Chodeshim Chanukah Purim. We don't make a Taanit Tzibur on Rosh Chodesh, on Hanukkah, and on Purim. What if they actually did make the fast? They declared a Monday, Thursday, Monday fast, and it turns out that the Thursday is a Rosh Chodesh, or it turns out that the Thursday is a Chanukah. Halacha is, once we started the sequence, so then you wouldn't interrupt the em mafsikin. You don't interrupt it for those days, for Rosh Chodesh, Chanukah, and Purim. Rabbi Gamliel.
I.e., you continue fasting.
I.e., you would continue. What does it mean, continue fasting?
The series, the next day.
So, in other words, let's say we said Monday, Thursday, Monday, but the Thursday was Rosh Chodesh.
So you're fasting.
You're fasting on Thursday, even though it's Rosh Chodesh, even though it's Chanukah, even though it's Purim. Rabban Gamliel, this is the opinion of Rabban Gamliel. Now, what's not clear in the Gemara is this only if they made a mistake, or were they not allowed to, were they allowed to say Monday, Thursday, Monday, knowing that they would have started the first Monday, and then the next Thursday would have been a Rosh Chodesh? Were they allowed to do that lechatechila or not? We'll come back to that. Amar Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir says, Af apisha Amar Rabban Gamliel mafsikin, even though Rabbi Gamliel says mafsikin, Modeh she'en mashlimin. He would also agree she'en mashlimin, that you don't finish the fast. So let's say, as an example, that middle Thursday, Monday, Thursday, Monday, first Monday is nothing. Second fast, that Rabbi Gamliel said en mafsikin. So it's Chanukah, or it's Rosh Chodesh, it's Purim, whatever. The halacha is that he would agree en mashlimin. You don't finish the fast. Rather, you break your fast before nightfall, so you did not fast the whole day. That way, you didn't fast actually on Rosh Chodesh. You didn't fast on Chanukah. You didn't fast on Purim. You actually ate before nightfall. Yeah?
Because Purim, you have to fulfill the Seudah, no? You wouldn't be able to fast.
You have to fill the Seudah. You have to have, what's it called? You have to have wine, but none of those reasons are actually given.
Wait, wouldn't you have fast 2 days in a row in Purim?
Sorry? Okay, so?
You can fast 2 days in a row?
You fast, break your fast, do it again the next day. Remember, the fasts that we institute, as we said earlier, are not Tisha B'Av Yom Kippur like. They don't start the night before, they start in the morning.
Gotcha.
Yeah, okay?
You also learned when you fast on Shabbat, you also have to break it and then fast again for Shabbat.
If a person, so that's a good question. I wouldn't imagine that this is the same, because the obligation of Shabbat to the Karat Shabbat Oneg is a much more strict obligation than Hanukkah Purim, which is midrabanan, or Rosh Chodesh, which is midoraita, but has no halachic obligations of simcha or oneg like Shabbat does. Okay, let's carry on. Same thing. If you had Tisha B'Av that fell out on Friday, so you would fast on the Friday, except that what would happen? You would make sure to break the fast before Shabbat came in.
Possible if it's Shabbat.
Oh, great question. So no, now it's not possible. Because now we have a schedule, a calendar that's set up properly. And the calendar actually was set up with this in mind to avoid these cases. Right? But technically, if you had a Tisha B'Av that would fall out on Fridays, i.e., if we were in the time of the Bet HaMikdash, where the months were being declared depending on when they saw the moon, it wasn't set. So then absolutely, you could have a scenario where Tisha B'Av would fall out on Friday, in which case you'd be obligated to fast. We would not say Nidche. We only push it if it falls out on Shabbat. But if it falls out Erev Shabbat, we would actually fast. And there are fasts that we would fast on a Friday. It doesn't happen very often. Yeah, Vasara B'Tevet. There are fasts that potentially, halachically, we do, and actually it does fall out even in the calendar.
That's the fast we say the woman find out exactly what time she was over.
Exactly. Yeah, okay.
How do we move the calendar around?
Well, the point is, once he was setting a calendar, so he worked out a calendar that fit the cycle of the 19-year cycle that fit, but he had leeway to be able to set it like this or like this. So when he set it, he made sure that none of these extreme scenarios or difficult cases would happen, and now we're in that loop. Now we're in that cycle.
Isn't there a Gemara that says like Lo Adu Rosh, right? Like it can't come out on like Rosh Hashanah can come out Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Okay.
So was that Gemara made? Wasn't that made before the calendar was set up? Or do they just worry about that specific month and they make sure that
I think that it actually refers to the calendar. Lo Adu Rosh is a scenario where the calendar was
already
set.
established. Okay.
Yeah, so it's telling you it will never come out in the calendar Adu Rosh. In an arbitrary world where you're declaring the moon based on the moon, you could wind up with Adu Rosh. Okay? Now, let's carry on. Says the Gemara, okay? See about midway through. Said the Taanit Ketzat Motzi'in et Teva. So we started by saying that the order, the way that we deal with the days of the Taanit is that you bring out the Teva to the middle of the road, right? As we said earlier, you put the ashes on the Teva, etc., etc. Es the Gemara, ve'afilu bekamaita, even it just says Seder Taaniyot, the order of the fasts, indicating that that's the case by all the fasts. Ve'afilu bekamaita, even in the first fast, es the Gemara, ve'ramini, let me ask you a question. We have a braita that says, Shalosh Taaniyot Rishonot, the first three fasts, Ushniot, and the second ones. So first three, second three. Nichnasin lebet hakneset. We go into the synagogue. Mitpalin kidech mitpalin kol hashana kula. We pray the same way we pray always. Ubesheva achronot, and in the seven last ones, motzin et hatova lechuva shelir, v'notnin afar al gabei hateva. You bring out the ark to the city streets. You put the ash on the teva. Ubrosh hanasi brosh abedin, and on the heads of the nasi and the abedin. Chol echad v'echad notel v'noten beroshot, also puts it on his own head. Rabbi Natan omer, if Ephraim aklei and mevi'in, Rabbi Natan added, it wasn't just regular, powdered substance like dirt or dust. It was actually ash from something that had burned. Now, clearly, you see from this Braita, the Braita is almost identical to the Mishnah, except that it distinguishes specifically that the first two sets of fasts you pray in the synagogue exactly as you would normally pray. So the Mishnah leaves it open-ended, seemingly, to tell you that you would do that even on the first two sets of Ta'aniyot. And the Braita says the opposite. Amar Rav Papa says, Ki Tanan, Nami Matnitan, Hasheva Achronot Tanan. The Mishnah, therefore, instead of creating a machloket where there is no need to create one, we just say that the Braita and the Mishnah are saying the same thing. And the Mishnah only meant on the 7 last days of the fast that we have this upgraded Ta'anit experience, 4D, where you have what's it called, ash sprinkled on your face, on your head, on the Aron HaKodesh, on the Nasi, the Rosh Bedin, etc., etc. Uverosh HaNasi. Now, so again, remember, all of this, other than the first sentence, right? Let's look at that again. Raminu, שלוש תעניות ראשונות ושניות נכנסים לבית הכנסת ומתפללים כדרך שמתפללים כל השנה כולה. ובשבע האחרונות מוציאים את התיבה לרחובה של עיר ונותנים עפר על גבי התיבה. Now, you could read this as a run-on sentence. Yeah? ומתפללים כדרך שמתפללים כל השנה כולה בשבע האחרונות. So that means that the entirety of the Mishnah is only referring to the 7 last days of the fast. The other way of understanding it is you could actually say that the Braita was differentiating first 2 sets and last set with regards to praying inside versus praying outside, with regards to taking the teva in or leaving it in the Bet HaKnesset. The rest of the things that happen afterwards could be you would do all those ash things, you would do those also in the first 2 sets.
What is that ash thing?
They would take ashes and they would put it on the head. We would put it on the head of the Nasi and on the Abedin, on the ark, and then everyone would put it also on their own heads. They would be like sackcloth and ashes. So they would put ash on to show that they were in a state of mourning. Okay? Ashkenazim, by the way, they do this, a little bit of ash, they do it at the wedding.
Oh. Shabbat also, no?
Shabbat, we also
do with
add
egg and,
a little bit of ash to the egg. But this is, I'm talking about where they're putting it on his a little bit on his forehead.
Goyim do that.
Sorry?
Goyim do that.
That's on Ash Wednesday. This I'm talking about at every wedding. Okay?
We still do the ash that it says in the shul on first set and second set. We
So-
didn't distinguish the difference.
I didn't say that. All I said was that from the Braita and the ensuing Rav Papa, we don't know if they inserted a comma after this distinction of inside-outside. If there's no comma, so then the whole of this is going on the 7th day. If there is a comma, the only differentiation is inside-outside, but the afar you would do on all the fast days. Okay, so it's not clear yet from the Gemara when we do this. Okay, all right. Fine. So I just want to just point out that we'll actually see this in Rashi as well. Look at Rashi on Rav Papa. Ki katani nai matnitan, yeah? Seder ta'aniyot ketzad, beseder ta'aniyot aharonot kamairi. Hachi garsinan begamara. This is how we have a girsa in the Gemara. Venotnin efer al gabe ateva, velo garsinan efer makle, efer srefa adit, mishum efrosh, yitzchak likaman. Second. Yeah, so sorry. The first Rashi. Ki katani nami katani matitan seder taniyot ketzad v'seder taniyot achronot kamairi. So what the way he learns this is not that the 7 days is referring only to the inside outside. Rashi seemingly is taking the entire Mishnah, backing up all the way to the beginning of the Mishnah, Seder Taniyot Ketzad, and he's telling you that the whole Mishnah is talking about on the 7th day. But again, we're going to see if that diuk is going to hold up or not, if we're going to go with that or not. But for the moment, that's where we are. The entire Mishnah is going on the 7, only on the 7 last ones. Okay? Rosh Hanasi, the Gemara says, 1 second. You just told me that you're going to put ash on the head of on the Nasi and on the Av Bedin, but then v'hadatani kol echad ve'echad. You put on everybody, right? Notel v'noten b'rosho. Any. This can't be. V'hatanan. We learned in the Mishnah. Rebbe Omer b'gdola matchilim min hagadol u'b'kelala matchilim min hakatan. Big dola matchilim min hagadol. In the big one, we start with the big. We'll see what that means. Shnei amar v'yoim Moshe Aaron ve'Elazar uli Itamar. Moshe starts with Aaron, Elazar, Itamar. Ubakilala matchilim hakatan. And when it's a kilala, we start from the small one. Batichila nitkalel nachash, ve'achar kach nitkalela hava, ve'achar kach nitkalela adam. Okay? So when you're doing it for a beracha, which way do we list the people? Top down. When you're talking about a beracha, how do you list the people? Top down. When we're talking about a kilala, you do bottom up. Okay? So in this scenario, we're talking about a ta'anit. So why are we starting with the Rosh Nasi? The Rosh Nasi, and then the Av Betin, and then Rosh Kol Echad Ve'echad. Okay? And we brought a proof that that's the case from the way the Torah does it by the Kilalav the Nachash versus the Beracha of Moshe, Aaron, Elazar, Tamar. The Gemara says, "Ha chashivuta lididhu da'amri lahu atun chashivutu lemebailan rahame." Specifically, we're going to be asking rahamim. So, what's the difference when we're putting ashes on the head of the Rosh Nasi? First, it indicates that this is the person that we hold in the highest regards. Because what are we saying? We're saying, look, we're going to start with the one who's the most powerful. Okay? So therefore, even though it's an element of kilala, over here there's still a point of chashivut that we're giving when we give it to that person. Okay?
And this applies across Tanakh, like whenever things are described, it's for good it's top down and for bad it's bottom up.
That's what it would seem. Yes. Okay? Alan Rahame al kul on the entire world. Says the Gemara. Kol echad ve'echad notel v'noten berosho. Amar Rav Ada. Rav Ada said, "V'chol echad ve'echad notel v'noten berosho." Every other person now takes and puts on his own head. When it came to the Nasi and the Av Beit Din, we placed it on their head. When it came to everybody else, everybody places it on their own head. Okay? Yes, the Gemara. Nasi v'Av Beit Din nami nishkelu inu. Why can't they do it themselves? V'ninchu b'rashayu. Ma'ishna d'shakil inu shachrina manach lehu. How come they need help putting ashes on their head and everybody else does it themselves? Amar Rabbi Abba d'min Kesari. Rabbi Abba from Kesaria used to say, "Eno doneh mitbayesh me'atzmo." When someone is embarrassed from their own experience, when a person is embarrassing himself, it's not that big a deal. The mitbayesh me'acherim, from someone who's embarrassed from somebody else. Dehainu, if, as an example, you say, I'm such a dib. You don't feel bad that you called yourself a dib. Someone else calls you a dib, forget it, you're ready to go to war, right? So the point is, when we're trying to elicit hamim, and we want to have a strong response, so the great leaders of the generation, the Nasi, the Av Beit Din, if we have someone else put the ashes on their forehead, afar lerashayu, that's going to help them get into the right frame of mind to pray, to humble themselves, to ask for rahamim.
And that's the reverse.
Sorry?
If that's the reverse, if the Nasi was going to put the ashes on the person, it would be bad for them because it's saying you did something wrong.
What do you mean? If Nasi would put it on whom?
If the Nasi would put it on the regular person, the average person, by putting it in, it's saying because you did wrong, this is why we're fasting.
The Gemara is not differentiating in level. It's just differentiating internal, external. It's not saying a small guy puts it on you, a big guy puts it on you. It just says you versus someone else.
Right, so then why doesn't the Nasi put it on himself?
The Nasi doesn't put it on himself because if we're trying to get him to pray in the best way he can, he needs to feel bad, like he's humiliated. Like this is on me.
Got it.
I should have done better. I need to do better. I need to, pray harder, etc., etc. When it comes to everybody else, I kind of imagine that either that's not going to work or that we're not relying so much on them. Okay, now. Says the Gemara. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak. Sorry, okay, you just told me you put it on the head, but where do you put it? Amar Rabbi Yitzchak. Yitzchak says b'mkom tefillin. You put it on the place of the tefillin. Shneimar lasum la'avele tzion latet lehem pe'er tahad efer. So the pasuk says that for the people that are mourning for Yerushalayim after the destruction, they would put for themselves pe'er tachat efer. Okay, and what's pe'er? Pe'er means tefillin, okay? Tachat efer, instead of the efer, the ashes that they had, illustrating that the place where you would put the efer and the place that you would put the pe'er is exactly the same place, okay? Now the Gemara gives us a siman, rechov, teva, v'sakim, efer kivura, umoriya, siman, okay? It gives you an amalgam of the various simanim that will help you remind yourself of all the things that we just discussed. So as an example, we take it to Rechova Shel Ir, Teva, they wear sakim, Efer, there's two Efers. Efer on the people, Efer on the Nasi, Efer on the Bima. Kivura is, I guess, referring to not making a eulogy on the days of the Taanit. Moria Siman. I'm not sure what the Siman of Moria is. I think I'll have to figure that one out. Okay? Says the Gemara. Lama yotzeim larachov. 1 second. Let's see. I don't see the rest. She explains what Moria is. Oh, sorry. So this siman is for what's going to come soon. So we're going to get to that yet. We haven't got to that yet. Ask the Gemara. Lama yotzeim larachov. Why do you have to pray outside? You know, in the middle of Times Square, in the middle of 42nd Street, middle of Broadway. What's the reason? Let's pray in the shul. So shul's holier. Rabbi Chia bar Abba Amar. Rabbi Chia bar Abba says, Lomar, to say za'aknu b'tzin'ah. We've been praying in shul all this time, quietly, privately. V'lo na'aninu, we didn't get answered. Nivazeh atzminu v'farhesya. We humiliate ourselves by asking in the street. It's like we're a beggar in the streets. Okay. So if we do that bizayon for ourselves in Farhesya, then maybe we'll be inclined to pray harder and our tefillah will be more mitkabel because we lowered ourselves in front of Hashem. Rish Lakish Amar, Rish Lakish says, Galinu galutenu mechaperet alenu. Right? That since we have been exiled, we've been sent away from the place of the Beit HaMikdash, just like we had the Beit HaMikdash galut, you have galut in the Beit HaKnesset. And galutenu, and therefore, the fact that we're wandering, instead of fixed in our Bet Knesset, that's also acts as an element of kapara for us. The Gemara says, "Maybe nayu." First opinion is we cried privately. Now let's cry publicly in order that we embarrassed more. Rish Lakish then said it's a galut. What's the difference between these two reasonings? The galim b'nei knishta libnei knishta. According to the opinion that it's about galut, it doesn't matter if you move from our synagogue to another synagogue. You're on the road. Yeah, you're not in your normal comfort zone. You're not in the place where you used to. So that would be, you'd fulfill it by going, like if we switched synagogues, swapped synagogues with Fifth Avenue, they prayed here, we prayed there. According to Resh Lakish, we would have done the thing. According to Rav Chia bar Abba, no, it has to be B'tzin'ah versus Berabim on the streets of the city. Okay, the Gemara moves on. So good, so we have to go out. Why do you take the teva out? I'm not sure what the question is.
So Rish Lakish doesn't provide a response to that?
What do you mean? It's not a response. He said, according to his logic, you'd fulfill it even if you weren't in the street. And Rish Lakish is okay with that.
Oh, he's okay with it.
Yeah. The Gemara was just asking, what's the practical difference between if you follow reason 1 or reason 2? The Gemara says the difference is that you'd be able to fulfill reason 2 even just by going to another Beit Knesset, and reason 1 you'd only be able to fulfill if you were actually physically.
What it's doing is disproving Rish Lakish's
No, it's
idea.
not. Ika binayu just means what's the difference between these two opinions?
Right, but
Aren't they
according to Rish Lakish,
saying
you
the
don't
same?
need to go out to the street.
You do. You don't need to go to the street. You need to go to another shul. So when the Mishnah said what it said about being on the streets of the city, it didn't mean necessarily outside. It means hit the streets. Go for a walk. Don't pray where you normally pray. Okay? It's a little bit of a difficult question. What do you mean, why are we doing that? Since we have to go, right? And if we have to go, so then why, obviously the teva would also have to go. We need it, right? The answer is that even if they had to move, it's still a big deal to move the Aron Kodesh to the middle of the street. So like what? I'll carry the Torah out. We'll read the Torah outside if we need to. But the idea of moving the Aron was also specifically said. So why did they make us go to that length? Amar Rabbi Shua ben Levi, Lomar, to say, Kli tzanua hayalanu, v'nitpazeh ba'avonenu. We had something that was private. It was members only. You know, you only could see it in the shul. It had its tziniut, it had its nobility, and it was brought down. It was degraded. It was embarrassed by our sins. So look at like it's, we say, Oy lahem me'elbona shel Torah. Woe to them from the embarrassment of the Torah. So the fact that they caused this embarrassment to the Torah, that it now needs to be paraded through the streets, the Aron is sitting in the sidewalk and there's a dog coming pooping 2 seconds away from it. that makes the person feel, again, the ramifications of their actions and want to do proper teshuvah. The Gemara continues. Why do we have to put on sackcloth? What's the addition of that? How does that help? Amar Reb Chia bar Abba says, Lomar hare anu chashuvim kebehema. We're not the same important as an animal, right? Because the sackcloth that we're talking about was made out of a rough material, right? It wasn't fine material made like only humans wear, but you also you'd cover an animal with it, or it was made with rough animal hair, right? So the person you'd look like you were an animal itself, okay? And again, that would allow a person to lower themselves. There's another explanation of this on chashuvim kebehemot, is that we say v'yadakol paul ki ata pe'alto. Everyone will know that you created them. V'yavin kol yitzu ki ata yitzarto. And I always say that there's an alternate way of understanding that. V'yadakol paul ki ata pe'alto means also you know every creation ki ata pe'alto. V'yavin kol yitzu, and Hashem understands every creation, right? Because He's the one that made it, right? Ki ata, I'm translating it differently. Now that idea means as well that we're appealing to HaKadosh Baruch Hu on a certain level and saying to God, this wasn't us. Right? There's a famous line that we say in the Gemara, we don't want, Ritzonenu la'asur titzonecha. It's our will to do your will. The only thing is, se'or sheba'isa, which means the yeast in the bread, in the dough, it causes things to bubble, to rise. We have a Yetzer Hara, it causes us to do these things. We're reminding Borei Olam that this didn't come from a rebellion, from a desire to push God out of our lives. We're animals, and we have animalistic urges and needs, and therefore the mistakes that we made, Borei Olam, look at them and understand that it comes from our imperfect nature. So how can we put ashes that are made from a fire, not any sort of powder or dust or dirt? Amar Yehuda ben Pazi, klomar imo anochi besara, to say, so to speak, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm with them b'tzara, in their difficulty. We find this idea in many places, right? That HaKadosh Baruch Hu illustrated to the Jewish people, if you're in pain, I'm in pain. Right? So as an example, when the Jewish people were in the desert, what does God appear in what? He appears in the snares, a thorn bush. God's going to appear in a majestic cedar tree, appear in a magnificent orange grove. Why is God appearing in a thorn bush? Chachamim explained to us, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was saying, if the Jews are in pain, so to speak, I also want to illustrate that I'm in pain with them. Okay? So too over here, we HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the commandment, Torah teaches us that in a time of a Taanit, you take the ashes, not only put them on your head, you put them, so to speak, on the Aaron's head, as if to say Hashem is also suffering with. Rish Lakish explains, B'chol sarotam lo tzar, same idea, that in every difficult situation, anytime it's hard for the Jews, it's also hard for him. Arar Reb Zera explained, Miresh ki avi chazin lu Rabbanan, dihavi efer mikla agabe teva, mizdazeh li kule gufe. In the beginning, the first time when I saw them do this procedure, putting all this ashes on top of the Aron Kodesh, it made me shake. My whole body physically was shaking. But it's clear from what he says over here that Merish is only in the beginning. And why is it only in the beginning? How come that the effect it had on him, kind of waned? So a simple understanding is that everything that shocks us initially, eventually we just become numb to. So Rav Zera was maybe saying that when I first saw this happen, it was like very powerful for me. But after that, whatever, I got used to it. Okay, again, we have to understand exactly why the Gemara why would he be telling us this? That it kind of it lost its effect on him. Why? What is the lesson from that to us at this juncture of the Gemara? So I don't have a proof for this, But what I wanted to say is that we're looking at all these different things that they put the ashes on the Rosh Nasi, put it on the Av Beit Din, put on the Torah, wear sackcloth, and each one of these things is like because the sackcloth is like this is saying this, and this is saying this, and this is saying this, and you look at it, it's like a lot. Like okay, I'm fasting, okay, fine. I'm closing the business. I'm not wearing the leather shirt. All these things I'm not doing. Hajj. I think the Gemara is actually explaining with this line of Reb Zera that the whole point of this was to get a rise out of people. So if everything you get used to, that's why it needed so many different components so that something would touch you. So
the all factor.
Yes, exactly. So I'm thinking, I thought to myself, that's probably why Reb Zera is coming to tell us this in this context. Lama notnim efer b'rosh kol echad ve'echad. How come everyone puts ashes on their head? What's the reasening for that? Pligi bar Reb Levi bar Chama Reb Chanina. Machloket between them. Okay? Chad Amar, one of them held, Hare anu chashuvim v'fanecha ke'efer. It's a statement of us saying, we are like ash in front of you. So the statement of each one putting on was to say that. Bechad Amar, another one said, no, Kidesh Yiskor Lanu, in order to remind us of Efrosh Shel Yitzchak, of the ashes of Yitzchak, and that should, so to speak, awaken the divine mercy, so that he should have mercy on us. What's the nafkamina between these two opinions? We said already earlier, remember? According to the opinion that the reason is because we are like ashes in front of you, right? So technically, you could also use that same logic with dirt or with dust. And we already explained that the word efer could mean any powdered substance.
Because
Anything.
You use the word mikle, right?
So when it says efer mikle, then efer mikle specifically describes that kind of efer. But it doesn't say efer mikle by everything. Okay? My binayu, and the Gemara answers exactly what we just said. Ikabinayu, the difference between these two opinions is afar stam, if you could just use plain earth, because if, according to the first opinion, we're like dirt in front of you, it's the humility element that we're looking for. According to the second opinion, we're trying to awaken the concept of Elosh Shel Yitzchak, and therefore, that specific thing, you need to have afar mikle. Take a look for 1 second at Tosafot, Efer mikle. Pirush, oto efer haya midavar hanisraf me'atzmot adam. This was specifically from something that had been burned of the bones of a human. Kidei liskor akedat Yitzchak. T'ilmale shelo haya ba. If not for this, ela kidei lomar shareanu lefanecha ke'efer, kemo ken ma'anei afar stam. If it's according to the first reasoning, any kind of afar would work. V'hainu pirush, and that's what the Gemara continues to say. Ika binayu afar stam. However, what's interesting is Tosafot adds an extra word here. We said afar mikle just means ash from a burning fire, from a fire that had burned something. Tosafot adds in that the fire that burned something should have burned human bones. So they would find a scenario where Bar Minan, they had a tragedy like that, and the ashes specifically, which had burned up a human being, right? They would take those ashes, and that, because that would indicate the concept of Yitzchak and Akedah in the most direct fashion, like the burnt up bones of a human being.
Why wouldn't you bury the burnt up ashes of a bone?
So if it's ash completely and there's nothing left, then there's no bone here.
But you have the ash.
The ash is no longer.
It's not.
It's like people ask this question. People ask this question. Forget burned. Let's make it a little bit easier. If someone is cremated, is there a mitzvah to bury a cremated person in a Jewish cemetery? No.
But that's going against halakha.
Why? So you're not allowed to cremate the person. But now that the person has been cremated, is there a mitzvah to bury him in the cemetery? No. Why? Because the ashes are already another thing. It's not the bones of that thing.
Wow.
Okay?
Sad.
It's very sad. Yeah.
So just to add on it, is there any does it affect a person being tahor if they're in contact with ash?
I don't think that there's any tumah. In fact, generally we give us a shiur for how much bone you need in order to make a kohen or someone tameh. and they say etzem kiseora, right? A bone the size of a grain of barley. Again, it's very small, but when it's ash, there's nothing there. Okay. Let's finish just this last piece. Okay, lama yotzin lebet hakvarot. Why do we go? Why is there a minhag to go out to the bet hakvarot on the fast day? We actually did not see that. Right?
You said something. We spoke about hesped.
We said we spoke about hesped,
Never cemetery.
but we never said that you go to a cemetery.
Right.
Here the Gemara is just assuming that you know this minhag, that people would go to a cemetery on a day of a fast, and the Gemara is asking why would we do that?
Brings out.
Answers the Gemara, Pliki bar Reb Levi bar Chama bar Reb Chanina, the Machloke Reb Chama bar Chanina, Levi bar Chama bar Chanina, the same thing. Charama one says, Harei anoch chashuvim fanech kemetim. We are compared in front of you like people that have passed away. Like without you, we're already corpses, Yani. Right? So it's in your hands. In order that the ones that have passed away already, they should, They should ask for rahamanut for us, and there should be a melitz yosher, a defending attorney, so to speak, in Shammai. My binay, ask the Gemara, what's the difference? The difference is if they could go to a cemetery of non-Jewish people. If the reason is because we are in front of you like dead people are dead people. If the reason is that we want them to ask Rahmanut and we want to rely on their zichuyot, so you can't go to Bet HaKvarot of their Kochavim and Mazalot. Interesting, just based on what we said earlier, how come the Gemara did not say, this concept with regards to the ashes?
Because it's the same thing.
Sorry?
It's the same thing as the first opinion. It's
It doesn't
a
need
dead
to be
body is a
George
dead
Ash.
body, or ash is not anything. It's just ash.
No, that's exactly what I'm proving. If ash was dead people, right? If that's what it was,
It doesn't have to be Jewish.
right?
Doesn't matter. It's not.
No,
Sorry?
but
It's not connecting anymore to the person.
just like you can go to
Yeah.
a cemetery of
Goyim.
goyim,
Yeah,
which means that the bodies are not. It doesn't matter. It doesn't need to be held up to a higher standard.
correct.
Even more so, if once it's an ash, it's even a lesser standard. It could be anybody, and it's fine.
No, I'm asking a different question. What I'm saying is, we earlier said that there's a difference between afar and efer mekle. And where was the difference, if you remember? The Gemara said the difference was in the fact that one of the opinions said, Charamar, that we're in front of you like afar, like dust. The other one said, you should remember Efro shel Yitzchak. Remember for us the dust, the Efer of Yitzchak. And the Gemara said, what's the difference between these two opinions? The answer to the Gemara, the first opinion, you could use dirt. Because you're just saying, I'm not in front of you like nothing. It's the nothingness of the Afar. Right? So then it doesn't matter if it's Afar or Efer. However, when it comes to, if you're trying to elicit the memory of Efro shel Yitzchak, then the Afar, that kind of brings it out. Okay? However, the Afar, there's nothing there anymore.
Apparently, yeah.
So it's interesting. If the point is Hare anu kemetim, the Afar doesn't say that. Because there's no met here.
I'm not following the.
If we're trying to elicit the concept of someone being dead, right? So why did the Gemara, the same two opinions are saying, why do we go to the Bet HaKvarot? To say, we are chashuvim kemetim. Correct? The other opinion says, Kadesh yivakshu aleinu metim rachamim. Or they should ask rahamanut for us.
And that one's cool. That one makes sense.
So now, let's go earlier. The Gemara earlier said, why do you put afar on the head of every person? Right? Why didn't the first opinion, instead of saying, we are in front of you like dust, he should have said, we are in front of you like dead people.
That's right.
The answer is, because ash is not dead people. Once it's consumed the bone completely to the point where it's ashes,
It's nothing.
it's not people, it's not dead people, there's no connection. So why does it have a connection to Yitzchak? Because we consider Yitzchak's Akedah to have gone through to the point where he would have been eliminated to be like ash. So the connection is ash, not ash, dead person. or ash Yitzchak Avinu. Is that clear? So I'm just proving it from the fact that this same machloket chose to use different reasons on these 2 points when it could have used the same reason, and the reason why it doesn't is because of that. Okay, we're going to continue with Hara Moriah next week.